Last time you saw me, we were setting up the automatic processes for the automatic forge. But we had one slight problem in that we weren't generating enough power because we were using a low voltage diesel generator. Now, to get higher voltage generators, it costs a hell of a lot of materials. And we're going to need a few machines to get those, but all those machines require tin cables and just some other things that are really quite annoying to get. So I'm going to start auto-crafting some tin cables. But first, before we do that, we're going to need a building. So let's go make ourselves a warehouse. Now, this warehouse is a little bit far away from our Japanese village, but there is a river that I want to be able to use to make a bridge over and a really nice pathway, because I sort of want to make a industrial district, if you like, because there's going to be so many processes, so many auto crafting recipes going around here. There's going to be loads of stuff, and this building that we're going to be doing is going to be like a modular building. We'll have maybe 4, 5, even possibly 6 of these things all linked up into one, where we'll have multiple of these processes going, and tin cables is just the start. Now that our warehouse is complete, it's on to the meat and potatoes of the video, which is crafting the machines. Now, again, this will take quite some time because bronze machinery is actually the lowest form of machines in modern industrialization. What's involved in making automatic tin cables? Well, we need an automatic way of getting cold coke. So we'll be using the coke oven with a bronze boiler. So there's one machine, we need a bronze boiler. We'll then need to macerate that cold coke into cold coke dust. So we're going to need a macerator, which will be electric. We'll then need a mixer, because then we need to mix the cold coke and water together. Again, we're going to need an electric mixer. To get the rubber sheet, we're then going to need another mixer, which will take the paper and the synthetic oil, which will create as the rubber sheet. So up to now, we're going to need 2 mixers, a macerator, and a bronze boiler for the rubber sheet. Now on to the tin cables. This is fairly simple. We're just going to need an electric compressor to compress the ingots down into a plate, and then we can send them straight into the electric wire mill, giving us the tin wire, and then we'll need to autocraft that into the tin cables. So altogether, for all of these processes, we're going to need a bronze boiler, we're going to need an electric macerator, we're going to need 2 electric mixers, an electric compressor, and an electric wire mill. And right now, I'm trying to make the electric compressor, and the recipe is not very kind, because we need 4 pistons, 2 analog circuits, a basic machine hull, and 2 tin cables. So there's already 2 tin cables just in the electric compressor alone. We then need to make 4 pistons, which again is another 2 tin cables alone. And we need 4 of those, so that's 10 tin cables needed total so far. But to get the pistons, we're going to need motors. We need 4 of those motors, which also takes 2 tin cables per. So we need 18 tin cables, just for the 4 pistons and the 2 that are required for the actual crafting recipe. However, it doesn't stop there. Analog circuits. The basic machine hull requires also 3. So it's 21 cables just to make the electric compressor. And like I said, we are getting the rubber sheets so very slowly that it would be way more efficient for us to set a machine, an automatic process up for this. And after what felt like hours, we finally had all of our modern industrialized machines. So let's go to the warehouse and start setting up the automatic processes. First thing I'm going to do is underground make a bit of a room, only because we're going to need our coke oven and our blast furnace, and having these things on show I don't think is going to look the best, especially with all the pipes that are going to have to go in and out. I don't think it's going to look good. So underground they go, and we'll have a couple of our machines in the actual warehouse so we can see them actually working to give the building a little bit of life. Once we had our room cleared out, the first process we're going to automate is the rubber sheets. Now this is the longest process to actually set up, and we're first going to be building our coke oven, which we went through a couple episodes ago on how to build. And once we had built that, we knew it was working, things like that, we could then get ourselves a coal seed growing with a harvester to automatically harvest the coal seed, put that into a crafter to make coal, which will then feed that straight in to the coke oven. But the coke oven won't do anything until we start getting steam into it. So by placing a sink down and our bronze boiler down and feeding that with the water and some coal, we can then feed the steam straight into the coke oven. And that is how we start getting coal coke. Now this is optional, but you want an item buffer, you can simply place drawer down with pipe going from the output on the coke oven going into the drawer to store any coal coke, but it's not needed. Now we need to take that coke and put it into a macerator, which will crush it down into the dust form that we need. And to power this, we're simply going to use an ender gate from power, because these machines can take FE, because modern industrialization can actually convert the FE power to the EU power that the machine uses. And then straight from the macerator, we need to take out the coal coke dust and put it into a mixer with a sink feeding the mixer water, which will make raw synthetic oil, which we can then feed straight into the blast furnace. However, we need to actually construct blast furnace. Once I'd configured the blast furnace into what I want, I needed to feed it steam so it had power. I also then needed to pull out the raw synthetic oil and put it into a fluid input into the blast furnace. And then on one of the fluid outputs, we then needed to feed that synthetic oil into another mixer. But before we start getting the rubber sheets, we're also going to need to feed the mixer with paper. And recently the mod pack had updated and we got the addition of botany pots, and I thought, let's try and use those. So a couple of botany pots later, some sand and some sugarcane, we were growing some sugarcane automatically. However, this process may change in the future. I might end up using the nature seed. We then needed to feed that sugarcane into a crafter, which would automatically craft us the paper. And then we could feed that paper into the mixer, which would then give us the rubber sheets. And that is rubber sheets automated onto the tin wire. Now, when it comes to the tin wire, this is a lot more simple. We need to do the exact same thing that we did with the coal seed, but with the tin seed this time, feeding it into a crafter and making that crafter craft us the tin, which is where I want two machines on show, which is the compressor and the wire mill. Now, we need to feed from the crafter going into the compressor the tin ingots, and then straight from the compressor we can then feed those tin plates into the electric wire mill, which would then create us tin wire. And then we could take those tin wires, throw it into a crafter with some rubber sheets, and craft ourselves some tin cables. Now again, I kind of want this bit on show, so I'm going to put in a drawer next to the electric wire mill and have those tin cables being fed into the oak drawer. That is tin cables automated. That is just one of the many things that we're going to have to automate. So I think off camera, I'm going to automate the analog circuits, because that one will be an even bigger headache to set up than tin cables. But that's going to do us for today's episode. So thank you all for watching today's episode. If you have enjoyed it, make sure to smash that like button. Consider subscribing if you are new, and I will see you all again for the next All the Mods 10 video.